وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم أيها المؤمنون بمصابنا بسيدنا ومولانا محمد بن علي الباقر إن لله وإنا إليه راجعون صلى الله عليك يا أبا جعفر يا ابن رسول الله فأشهد أنك لقيت الله وأنت شهيد عذب الله قاتلك بأنواع العذاب وجدد عليه العذاب يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فلنفوز فوزا عظيما بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وأهل بيتك المظلومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد قال الله تعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي زدني علما says my Lord increase me in knowledge. As for fiqh or jurisprudence of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, most of it was taken from two Imams, from Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq alayhimus salam. The encyclopedias of jurisprudence that we have from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, such as Al-Jawahir, Urwat al-Wuthqa, these books are full of traditions that are narrated on the authority of Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq alayhimus salam. And the faqih, the jurist, when he wants to make a ruling, he depends on these narrations from these books. He gives religious opinions based on their narrations. As for the other, we have other books of traditions that they rely upon, like Wasa' al-Shia, Bahur al-Amali, we have Tadib al-Ahkam, we have Man La Yahduru al-Faqih, Sheikh Saduq, and most of these like them, they are all narrations mostly from these two Imams, Imam Baqir, Imam Sadiq, alayhimus salam. And these encyclopedias are very important references for us because all of our jurisprudence, all our fiqh, our ahkam are coming from these. Imam Baqir alayhi salam and his son Imam Sadiq alayhi salam did their best to teach fiqh of Ahlul Bayt and spread the fiqh, the jurisprudence of Ahlul Bayt to the masses. They took care of it at a time that the Muslim community, they didn't care about ahkam. They were only focused on siyasa. They were only focused on political events. And the governments of that time, they completely neglected ahkam. They didn't give anything to it. When we look at the historical texts about this time, it said that the rulers, the scholars, and the people of the first century, they neglected ahkam. They didn't know their religious rulings. We mean that no knowledge of religious affairs, and they were weak and even in the acts of worship. They didn't know how to make their salat properly, how to do their fasting properly, for example. When we look at Ibn Abbas, he did a sermon in Basra, in south of Iraq, toward the end of month of Ramadan. And he told the people, pay your zakat al-fitr. So the people didn't even know what zakat al-fitr was. They had no idea what this was. So he told them, he said, is there anybody from Medina that's present here in Basra? If so, let him stand up and teach his brothers. Because at that time, they didn't know about the religion. Only the people from Medina knew about the religion in detail. It said that the Syrians at that time, they didn't even know the number of rakat that they needed to make in their wajib prayers. They didn't know. They were ignorant of ahkam. So they would ask the companions, the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the rulings of salat. It was said that during the time of the Umayyads, they paid no attention to religious affairs, and the people had very little knowledge of jurisprudence at all. They didn't know fiqh, they didn't know ahkam. No one knew these except the people of Medina. So Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq, alayhim wassalam, they played a very important role in proclaiming jurisprudence, teaching jurisprudence, explaining to people what the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are. They offered a very great service to mankind, to the Muslim Ummah. And if it wasn't for them, the people would have lost their religion completely. They would have lost all of their religious wealth that they had. And during that time, there was no one more knowledgeable than them. They were the most knowledgeable. It says that they knew so much about Islamic law, about the precepts of religion, so the children of the companions of Rasulullah would all go to them. During their time, they would go to Imam Baqir alayhi salam. And even the heads of the madhab, the other madahib, such as Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali, these Sunni madahib, they would come, like Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, they would come to the Imam. They would learn from our Imam and learn sciences for them. We have a large group of Islamic scholars, companions of Ahlul Bayt alayhim wasalam, that are famous for narrating traditions like Zarara, Muhammad ibn Muslim, Aban ibn Taghlib. These people were companions of the Imam and they studied under Imam Baqir alayhi salam. So thanks to them, we have all of these traditions written down. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have all of these. They started compiling them and writing them in books. It's said that the Shia were the first people to write down the jurisprudence. It says, Mustafa Abdul Razak, he says, it's natural that the Shia were the first to record jurisprudence, fiqh, because it's the belief in the isma, or the infallibility of their imams, and they urge them to write down the religious judgments and to write down the religious opinions, so that way it could be passed on to us. With that, the Shia took part in preserving the Islamic heritage. It's necessary to consider carefully the ahkam of Ahlul Bayt alayhim wasalam, and we have to at least strive to learn the basic ahkam, what we need to do in our salat, what we need to do in our fasting, what we need to do in tahara. These things that we are doing every single day. In Ramadan, we do once a year, but salat, tahara, we're doing these every day. We should at least take the time to learn these rulings. Because these imams, they spent a lot of time. They dedicated a lot of time to spread this to us. And they were leaving their legacy for us. So I believe we owe it to them to learn at least the basics of our religion. We shouldn't rely on only the Sheikh knowing, and we ask the Sheikh for these things. Everyone in community should at least know the basics of ahkam for tahara and salat and siyam. So if we don't take the time to learn these things and we don't give any attention to ahkam, we could be like Umayyads. Umayyads, they didn't care anything about religion. They didn't care anything about what rulings they had to do. They didn't care about jurisprudence, so much so that they didn't know what to do in their salat. They didn't even know how many rakat they needed to make. I remember one time one of the caliph, they came and they led the salat and they were drunk. Na'udhu billah. It was Fajr salat. He led 4 rakat and he finished. He turned around. He said, "Do you want more?" You know, he didn't know. Or he didn't even care that what we have. So we have to learn exactly what we need to do. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Important characteristic of fiqh of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is that it's directly connected to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. It's because it came through the chains of the Imams from Ahlul Bayt. And they were the closest people to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And all the narrations from them, they are the closest to reality. It's better to rely on them to go outside of the house. and learn from other people. And they urge the jurists to rely on narrations from the Imams when you take fatwa. When you make religious ruling, you have to go to the narrations to base the principles on those. And that's because the narrations of the Imams, they come from original proofs. They come from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he said that the traditions, they don't belong to himself. He said, these are not coming from me. These are coming from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, I'm not pulling them from my pocket, for example, giving them to you. The chain goes back to the Prophet. He said, if we talked according to our own opinions, we would go astray, as those who had gone astray before us. However, we talk according to the proof that Allah explained to His Prophet, and then the Prophet explained to us. This knowledge is inherited from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. One time, Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he was asked about a narration that he said, and he didn't give it a chain of narrators. Normally, when you get a hadith, it says Fulan narrated from Fulan, from Fulan, from Fulan, from Rasulullah, for example. There's a chain. It's not. And we have Ilm al-Rajal, we study the history of the people, the narrators. Ilm al-Hadith, we study if it's sound or not. So Imam Baqir alayhi salam says hadith from Rasulullah with no chain of narrators at all. So he was asked about it. So he said, when I mention a narration, I don't ascribe to it a certain chain of authority. Then my authority concerning it is my father, Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, on the authority of his father, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, on the authority of his father, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, on the authority of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, from Jibreel, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the best authority. This is the most correct way. We cannot go wrong with this chain of narrators. It's the golden chain. The best thing that we can do is rely on this, and there's no other safer method to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than to go through Ahlul Bayt, the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. One time the Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he said, I find it strange, how strange, that people are saying that we are misguided and they are guided, when the angel of revelation came down in our house and the message spread out from our house. So how come we are misguided and everyone else is guided? It makes no sense. The people of the house got the revelation. It's safest to go to them. So jurisprudence of Ahlul Bayt, fiqh from Ahlul Bayt, is distinguished from the rest of Islamic jurisprudence by opening the door of ijtihad. Ijtihad means concluding religious verdicts, striving and deducing religious verdicts from Quran and from a hadith, riwayat. And this proves the originality of fiqh from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and is continuously solving the problems of mankind. For example, we need modern solutions for such things. Artificial vaccination, they didn't have this in time of Rasulullah. Organ transplants, they didn't have this in time of Rasulullah. So what do we do about it? That's why we have ijtihad. We have our maraja that can deduce the rules based on narrations and upon Quran. They can find the rulings, what to do in those matters. So Ahlul Sunnah in Azhar University, they also agree that the opening of the door of ijtihad is good and it is needed. They have closed the door to ijtihad with Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Shafi'i, Hanbali. They closed the door to ijtihad from that time. This is a long time ago. They have new problems. What about making salat in airplane? They didn't have airplane in that time. What do we do with that? They closed the door to ijtihad. So they have no way to figure that out because they only accept ijtihad of those people before. We have ijtihad continuously going on now. So the scholars of Azhar supported the Shia in this respect. They said, one of them, Ahmed Amin, he said, the Muslims have showed their feebleness when they have believed in closing the door to ijtihad. That is because there will be no qualified mujtahid to give rulings among the people. This is the opinion of some of those who imitate others, and for their confidence in themselves is weak. They don't believe that they can do ijtihad. They don't have the ability. They don't have the confidence. And they mistrust the people to do ijtihad, is what he says. Whereas we have maraja, it is possible they are giving ijtihad, they're giving fatawa and all of these things. So, Imam Baqir alayhi salam. The name Al-Baqir means to split open something, to delve into, split it open and delve into something. Yarhamukallah. To dive down into the knowledge, to split open the knowledge and dive down into this. Among the sciences that Imam Baqir alayhi salam split open was the science of ilm al-usul, usul al-fiqh. So the Shia jurists resort to give their religious fatwa according to this science when they find no tradition, no ayat, no hadith, no nothing. What do I do? They have a science, and it came from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and they use this science to make religious verdicts when there is no other way and there's no other proof. It's one of the greatest sciences of our school of thought, is ilm al-usul. It's very difficult and challenging, and ulama spending a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of years dedicated to this science. That's because ijtihad depends on this. The mujtahid, he studies the chapters of this science, and the researchers and the scholars have agreed that Imam Baqir alayhi salam was the first one to establish ilm al-usul. Sayyid al-Hasan al-Sadr, he said, Imam Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir alayhi salam was the first to open the doors of the chapter. He was the first to open the chapters of this science and to split open the problems of this science. Then his son Imam Sadiq alayhi salam came after him to continue it. Then they dictated its rules and its problems to a group of their students. Then the later generations, they put them together into books. Then the reliable narrators reported all of these on the chapters on the authority of the members of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So we have these in our books, and the scholars are spending many years studying these sciences. We'll give just one example of one of these sciences, one of these rules, so we can understand. There's many of these rules, tons of them. We'll give one extracted from Usul al-Fiqh. It's, they call it Qawad al-Fiqhiyya, the rules from jurisprudence, which is a science that came from Usul al-Fiqh. One of them, the rules, is called Qa'adatul Tajawuz, means the rule of passing. So, for example, this rule means when you have a doubt in your salat, what do we do if we don't have specific riwayat about this thing? This rule tells us, for example, in namaz, the person has a doubt about the action that came before it, and he has already moved to the next thing. For example, he is in ruku. You went to ruku, but you have a doubt now. You're in ruku, and you have a doubt. Did I say my Fatiha and Surah or not? I don't know. This rule says that whatever has come before, you're in the next position, you should continue on and ignore that doubt. For example, you're in sujood, and you have a doubt that you made ruku or not. You continue on. This is one of the rules, Qa'adatul Tajawuz. So this is one of the rules of usul. And there's many rules of usul that we have. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You can turn that light. Despite being well known for his knowledge, his status, his akhlaq, his morality, Imam Baqir alayhi salam was not loved by all, as we may think. There were some people who saw the Imam as a threat to their power. That maybe the people would rally around him and they would get rid of themselves as the ruler and choose the Imam instead. They were afraid of this threat, this idea posed towards their kingdom. Hisham ibn al-Hakam was the most spiteful person towards the Imam. He had the greatest hatred for Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. The Imam excelled in all traits, outshining the Umayyads, whether it was in knowledge, whether it was in ilm, whether it was in akhlaq, whether it was in karama, whether it's in generosity, or even other skills. Once Hisham, he summoned the Imam to compete with the Umayyads and the other people in archery. He said, okay, the Imam, no way he's going to know archery. He is book smart, but he's not going to know how to shoot bow and arrow, for example. Hisham thought that the Imam would miss his target because often the teachers, they're not skilled in sports. So he thought he would be able to use the Imam's failure in order to lower the status of the Imam and make fun of the Imam to the Syrians. However, the Imam pulled back the string of the bow, shot the arrow, and hit the target. He hit the target each time. And the people had never seen such skill in archery like the skill of the Imam. So Hisham became angry. He got enraged. So much so that this is one of the reasons that Hisham wanted to kill the Imam. Also, the Imam, he debated with Hisham about the issue of imamat. The Imam defeated Hisham. He became full of anger, losing to Imam Baqir. Another time, the Imam debated with the scholars of the Christians. Hisham was hoping that the Christians would defeat the Imam, but the Imam defeated the Christian scholars. So the Syrians became talking about the victory of the Imam over the Christians. They started praising the Imam's skills in debate. They started praising the knowledge of the Imam. This made Hisham very angry, very jealous. So much so that it led to him plotting to kill the Imam. Ya Allah. Hisham gave the Imam poison. He gave him poison in a drink, and he waited for the effects to take place in the body of the Imam. When the poison started to affect the Imam, he called to the people, he called them to come to him, and he appointed his son Ja'far ibn Muhammad to be the successor after him. He requested him to give him the kafan from the abba that he used to make his namaz in. He dedicated some money to a group of women to go and do azah for him, to mourn for him in Mina for the next 10 years. The reason for this is that Mina was the greatest center where the Muslims would gather. When they saw the women crying in Mina, they would ask, why are these women crying? Why are they weeping? They would be told that the Umayyads persecuted and killed Imam Baqir alayhi salam. So the Umayyads wouldn't be able to hide the murder of the Imam. The poison acted quickly in the body of Imam Abu Ja'far Muhammad. So the death approached the Imam quickly, it approached him fast. During his last hours, he began reciting the Quran. He started asking Allah for his forgiveness. While his tongue was praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angel of death came and took the soul of our Imam. His son Imam Sadiq alayhi salam prepared the body for the burial. He washed the body of the Imam. He gave the Imam his kafan. What difficult time it is to bury one's own father. But it wasn't only his father that he was burying in that grave. He was burying the best of creation of that time, the representative of Allah on the earth. The people carried the body of the blessed Imam and they all gathered around the body. They were shouting, Wa wayla, wa musibata, wa imama. When they reached the cemetery of Al-Baqir, they dug a grave alongside the grave of his father, Imam Zain al-Abidin, beside his great uncle, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, the master of the youth of Jannah. Then Imam Sadiq, he buried his father in his final resting place. He didn't just bury the body of the Imam, but he buried along with the Imam knowledge, patience, kindness to people, all the characteristics of the Imam. He buried them with him. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكناه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.